Hello and welcome back to the Not the Old Firm YouTube channel. My name is Ben Banks. Today's video is a special hour-long one on the impacts of COVID-19 on youth football, and we're joined by two very special guests for us to discuss all elements of that and the impacts it's had. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please do. It would mean a lot to us as we try and grow this channel and grow our video footage on the site and on our social medias. We're always building. We've added Old Firm Facts to our ranks as well, so his columns will be coming later this month. But for now, on top of that exciting content to come, we have got this lengthy chat, an important discussion as well, I think, on all the impacts of COVID-19 on youth football. We've seen how it's affected the senior game. Perhaps youth football hasn't been well talked about. And we're going to discuss all aspects of that with our two guests. First of all, it's David Jenkins of Sports Therapy Scotland. He has been a sports therapist at clubs like Falkirk and also at elite academy level, as well as running his own clinics. He also coaches at grassroots level. So he provides an overview in the sort of health and fitness aspect that's impacted young footballers across the country. And as well as that, we've got Stuart McCaffrey of the Scottish Football Partnership and Trust. That name might ring a bell to you. They were involved with the James Andersons going on as he put lots of beneficial money into the Scottish game. He's the Stuart McCaffrey, is the chief operating officer of that, and he's going to discuss to us some of the goings on that happened with James Anderson, some of the money that's came into the Scottish game during the pandemic, the need for more revenue at grassroots level, amateur level, women's football, all across the game at youth level. It's all covered in this. We've tried to cover as much as we can in the hour-long chat, and we do thank David and Stuart for their time. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel, like seeing content like this, please let us know by hitting that subscribe button. It would really mean a lot to us. So that's all the boring PR stuff out the way from me. Please do enjoy this chat. If there's anything else you want to see in these types of videos, if you want another chat on this, if there's anything we've missed, do let us know and we'll try and get round to it when we can. But that's all from me. Enjoy our chat with David and Stuart, and until next time, take it easy. Right. Before I start then, can I get you to introduce yourselves and what you do so the viewer knows what you're doing? Stuart, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so Stuart McCaffrey, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Scottish Football Partnership and Trust. So we have a company and a charity that tries its best to invest into all levels of Scottish football.
And David?
Hi, David Jenkins. I run Sports Therapy Scotland. It's a couple of clinics, and one in Glasgow, one in Stirling, primarily treating people from a sporting background, but I have worked in professional football. If you deem Falkirk, Wraith Rovers and stuff, it's all subjective, I suppose. But I've worked in youth academies through to first team as a therapist, dealing with all types of injuries. And I suppose, quite important, what you say, like a shoulder to cry on at times at different age groups, formally and informally, So, good bit of experience in football and other sports, ice hockey, martial arts. So, if it's injured, I'll try and fix it and get them back.
Yeah, that sounds pretty vast. I can imagine the differences between a karate injury and a sliding tackle is probably slightly different.
It all comes into play late stage rehab, early stage, pain, range of movement. Just don't make it any worse. Then it becomes more specific to the athlete once you're at a certain protocol. But at the early stages, don't make them any worse, And again, the psychological aspect, nobody wants to miss what they love doing. So it's trying to promote things that the person can do at all age groups to see the end goal, which is playing, but they have to get through a certain, they have to go through in stages. And it's just try to keep them positive all the time. I've seen this before. It's okay, I've seen it. I know how to keep you right. I know where you need to go next, and don't worry about it. Get in touch, get your parents to get in touch. It's just letting them know someone's there and understand, the injury at all ages. That applies to adults as well. That's not just kids.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously been a period where not just kids, I suppose, but obviously this will be the focus of this sort of article and video where children have sort of been pent up in the houses and stuff. With the big thing about my generation, the generation that will go after me, is we're all stuck in the house playing Xboxes and PlayStation. But we've not really had much of a choice in the last sort of 6 months and stuff as well that's going on. Although as we record this today, I suppose the vaccine news is good news. But just in terms of, I'll go to you, Stuart, just to give you a bit of input. Like you deal firsthand with these sort of sports club at the grassroots level. What has sort of been the impact? Because it's been so vast north. you've got the tier restrictions. They've pretty much been tier 1, but then here in the Central Belt, it's been tier 4 for a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to recognise the amount of activity that goes on, and the scale of it, I suppose, presents problems because if you just take the Scottish Youth FA, for example, you've got 4,000 teams. You take the Scottish Women's FA, Scottish Women's Football, you've got 200 teams. You then add in the amateur teams, run by very, very well, well-minded volunteers who put in a lot of work. They have, lives outside football, and we're asking them to somehow interpret all of these guidelines and somehow make sure football continues. So I think it's been a real challenge. But I have to say, my experience of grassroots football and the volunteers are that it doesn't matter what the challenge is. They'll try and find a way. There's so much passion in what they do to give kids opportunities to play. So I think there's been a huge amount has gone on. I think everyone appreciates something more when they don't have it. And I think for a lot of the kids, a lot of the coaches, they get a lot out of it as well. It's that opportunity to run about, have a kick of the ball, put a smile on someone's face. So it's important as much for the players, I think, as it is for the coaches. So it's been a big challenge. But I would say it's a challenge that clubs have embraced, and they are innovating to make sure that activity can continue because they recognise how important it is for their community and their kids.
And it's a shame because you're sort of you've missed, obviously, for this year, of course, it's a wee while gone now, but obviously in terms of the financial aspect of it as well, you've obviously missed the full summer of the big tournaments that get played across the place, like Landa Burns and the Scottish Youth Cup and things like that. They've all sort of gone past this year. And not so much, I know I don't want to focus too much on the financial aspect, but obviously those are big things for kids to play against teams that don't usually play against from different areas and things. That's all been a miss this year.
Yeah, and I think that there's some hidden issues with that as well. In terms of that funding, it's probably fundraising. Is core to some of the activities that these clubs can deliver, and many of the clubs are keeping their doors open to kids who can't afford to play. So if you've got a revenue stream which involves fundraising, having tournaments, just to make sure that those kids can participate, to make sure that they do have a tracksuit, they do have a strip, and they do feel part of the club. If that revenue stream is taken away, it presents real challenges that clubs have to overcome, and I fear that a number of clubs will struggle because invariably they do fundraise, they do have sponsors, and these have been kind of taken away from them this year. That opportunity's not been there. So I think it's important that we recognise that we have to put in put in measures to mitigate some of these challenges, because we can't allow participation to drop. If anything, in my opinion, we have to do more than we were doing pre-COVID to make sure more activity happens, to make sure more grassroots clubs are better resourced, because football is so important to the physical and mental well-being of so many kids in Scotland. We need more of the kids to participate. We can't allow it to drop. So some of these financial challenges, I think you're right to highlight, and I'm not so sure that people fully understand. People are not involved in running a small club, don't understand that they're always trying to bring in just enough to keep going, and this is going to be a very, very difficult year because they don't have a big bank account full of money. It's a really difficult time, and certainly we've been trying to help a number of initiatives. We've been very fortunate to have some investment from James Anderson. It was quite well publicised. Some investment into the girls and women's game and into the SYFA to try and reduce some of these costs and to try and keep some clubs going. So it's been a challenging year, but I think everyone's trying to pull together. But I would like to see a little bit more investment coming in to grassroots to make sure clubs can not just survive but actually thrive going forward.
Yeah, and for you, David, as well, obviously, if kids are coming out of this period, obviously they did go back sort of a wee bit in different tiers and stuff, sort of September, October time. But for you, I'm assuming them going straight, it's not like in professional football where they have a couple of weeks of pre-season and stuff and then they're back playing pre-season. Right. Like that. They're just straight out and they're just running about like daft again. I'm assuming, even though obviously perhaps a younger body can deal with that a bit more, it still presents challenges.
It does, you know. And then again, I talked to my son about that over the summer in lockdown, because I was here in the garden for 5 months as well. I shut the clinics, and I said it's important to. It's beautiful weather if you can. We've got a garden, so let's go outside, but not make an issue of it if you didn't want to go. You know, and important to just emphasise a little often. I says when you do go back, it's going to be hard. I said you were in the group that could have been in the first group, you know, as long as everybody worked hard at training, because I used to coach there as well. It was all specific to the individual. It wasn't about being, as you know, the first finished. It was working within your level and achieving what you're looking to achieve. I says, but Blair, you need to keep it consistent, wee man, and it's hard, but you just need to do it, and it's just a little off and just keep ticking over, because it all adds up. I said, when you go back, you're going to have that feeling where you can't do it anymore. I said, but everybody's going to be the same. You're all in the same boat, so don't feel as if you're any different to any of the rest of the guys that are out there. I said, and when you're talking to your pals in the Xbox, tell them, give them a bit of advice, do a little bit, measure it. If they've got the phone, make a point, they've always got the phone, but look at the steps that they're doing and try and beat it the next day. Get the football out, keep your uppies. If your left foot's not as good, we did it at the cherry tree at the back garden. We'd spend hours trying to get the ball through the V, right foot, then left foot. And I couldn't even get the right foot, never mind the left, but then we'd swap ends and hours would disappear. But if you're lucky enough to have the area to do it, I understand if someone's cooped up in a flat, it ain't going to be the same. But I did have a couple of parents get in touch, and I said, let them have the ball or her at her feet walking around the house. And sure, they're not kicking it off anything and breaking stuff. I won't take responsibility. But if they can just keep it on the front of the foot and turn, and if they see somebody coming through the door, stop, put your foot in the ball, let them pass, or they stop. So they communicate, you know, just trying to make a skill out of daily activity that's completely different to what they're used to. But it all adds up. It all feeds into the pie at the end of the day, and it's a new skill learned. That's what I tried to do with parents who get in touch, and especially my son. And it's a lot easier to talk about it than get them doing it. I'm no different to any other parent in exactly the same boat. But they started, you know, they're back on Monday. He says, oh, my legs feel great. I mean, they're sore. I went, that's fine. I said, but how fit do you feel? He goes, we've been out running at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, even 2 kilometres, 1 kilometre. It doesn't matter. The sense of achievement by doing something over not doing it, regardless how little, is monumental with a child at any age. So that's why I sort of tried to stress, do something, and it doesn't matter how much. Just the thought process of doing it was huge. And it's worked with, I hope my son, it worked with me, and it's worked with other clients and parents of kids that I've known for years. And letting them know that, I says, while it might sound as if I've got the answers, it doesn't mean I can get my kids doing it. You know, I said, I'm in exactly the same boat as you guys. I says, but don't beat yourself up, and certainly don't make it an issue, because then they just back off, and it becomes that point of the day. Is dad going to come through and say to me, you need to get out for a run, you need to be doing that, and it becomes not fun. So that's how I tried to approach it. And I was at loggerheads a few times, Ben and Stuart, but then I would sort of pull back and leave it, and would get out, and it's just little bits often to tick over. And harder, of course, if you're in an academy setting where you have to be performing at a higher level. That's where I think a lot of clubs had the coaches in place with the strength and conditioning network that they can provide, you know, a tailor-made program. And usually, I'd say that working with the boys at that level, they are a bit more motivated because they see the long-term strategy. So they may be, but again, you'll find the odd one that isn't. But I think it's like everything in life, isn't it? It's the level that the person's at. If they can keep ticking over, if they feel they haven't went back at the end of it and they've still maintained something, that was the important thing for me and for saying the end of the kids that I know. So.
Yeah, Ben, the other thing I would say, just on, you know, in terms of grassroots, I think there's a real opportunity here because, you know, football, you know, is a sport. It's played outdoors. You know, there are other sports who have struggled, you know, some of the indoor sports. You know, we're quite fortunate that, you know, provided the weather's not too grim in winter, we can still be out. We can be on grass, we can be on astro. Even if it is, you know, training, you know, keeping your distance, you can still be having activity. Okay, it's not match activity, but you know, football, I suppose, like golf, has been a little bit fortunate that in the main, you know, it could come back. Other sports, I think, are far worse off. So, who knows, although there's some challenges, it might be that we might see a spike in some sports, albeit it might be to the detriment of others. But I think definitely there are parents there clearly looking for things to do with their kids that they can do through this period. Things like going to soft play centres, just not there anymore. So does that maybe make the parent more inclined to say, well, we'll take the kid to the local participation centre, whatever community club it is, and before you know it, we could actually have what is a very, very dark and dismal situation could actually provide us with an opportunity, because that's the thing with adversity. It does provide opportunity. So we have to be mindful of the challenges, but we have to also look at, I think, the opportunities for grassroots, to really kick on. And again, of course, that then has a huge benefit further up, the tree with the players who then move into academy football and then hopefully into the professional ranks. So, I think we need to, come out of what's been a bad year, but with a bit of enthusiasm that we want to really put, I think, sport, in my opinion, at the heart of recovery. I think, Dave, you know better than me in terms of the benefits, and it would appear to me that there will be potentially another pandemic that will come along, but we have to be fitter and stronger and better prepared as people and as a sport, so that we can make sure the fans can be in the ground, because we've done it before. We know what the procedure is. Kids can continue to train, and we're also fitter. All of us, but the kids in the next generation coming through are not just on their Xbox, but they're actually okay. They've got that bit in their life, but they're also out and they're fit and they're active. They're engaged in whatever sport it is. It doesn't matter to me. Obviously, football tends to win because it's maybe more popular in terms of numbers and participation. I was doing some research earlier on. Over 147,000 registered players football in Scotland. Over 630,000 recreational players, guys just playing fives, and girls for that matter. Of all ages. It's such a big thing. So opportunities, I think, for us to use football and sport to hopefully recover from what's been a pretty awful year.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned a bit about some of the benefits that can have. I'll try and take everybody watching this and myself back to sort of PE class back in S2 and S3. What are some of the benefits of that? Obviously there's some very obvious ones, but perhaps there's other ones that people aren't aware of, perhaps particularly the mental side of it as well. I think that's always something that's came into the spotlight a bit more. Perhaps been for a few years is that sort of you're with 20, 21 of your friends and you're all striving towards one goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I have friends all over the country because of football. You might not see them very often, but they're still there. I think it's a brilliant sport for that. I think it breaks down a lot of barriers. When I see a teammate, he's a teammate. It doesn't matter what country they're from, what their religion is, what their skin colour is. You're part of a team, and that team look after you. When you're down, they pick you back up, and I think that's why kids having sport in their life is so important, because they may face other difficulties in their life. They may not have a settled home life, but if you can get them to that club, that football club, they've got teammates for life. They've got coaches that will look after them. I think it's so important. The mental health side is clearly something that's more spoken about, and more people are more open now, I think, about it. But I think we can tackle a lot of these challenges by having people engaged in sport and getting that lift from participating, but also just having that network of friends, and it helps you meet friends from all over the place. Wherever you go in your career, you'll meet friends, you'll make new teammates, you'll have new coaches. I think it's so important, and I think we can actually fix a lot of the things that we worry about in society through sport and through football. So again, I think there's an opportunity for us to do more, and that might need a little bit more investment, and it might need a national philosophy and a change to how we view sport, and maybe put it at the front. And really, embrace a kind of future as a real sporting nation across all sports, not just football. But as I say, football's the bit I'm interested in, so I'm sure it would do okay. Out of that policy.
Yeah, you would like to think as well, going into the new year, obviously, with this vaccine news that came out as we record this today, and that hopefully goes as well as planned. And then you've also got the Scotland at the Euros next summer. If you can sort of get kids back into playing, well, as normal as you can by that point, you've got Scotland at a major tournament there is opportunity there for hopefully a generational first. And you can see the women's game, the sort of spike that gave at them being in a major tournament. You would hope to see similar across the board if the men's team go on to do well at the Euros next year.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, go back a week or so ago, I felt like a kid again. I played with Ryan Christie's dad at Inverness. I know the family really well, and you literally are kicking every ball. You're remembering what it was like to usually it was we would qualify and then we'd be so close to making the last 16 and getting out the group, and it takes you back, and it was just for 90 minutes it was just or 89 and a half or whatever it was, it was glorious, and then you felt as if it had been taken away from us, and I think it's great. I mean, I've got two young daughters, and the two of them, one in particular heard me jumping about the house and coming downstairs, and she was so impressed, and so she was so enthralled by it all and engaging with it, and the next day she's talking about Ryan Christie and David Marshall, and I think that's the bit that we can. It's you could say it's the bit we've been missing really to kick football on again. In Scotland is that that inspiration that kids get from seeing their heroes, playing in a Scotland strip and competing at the highest level. So I think it's again. Let's hope that next year, throw the Euros into the mix, we can really, use it as a springboard for football at all levels. And you're right to highlight the women's national team and how well they have done in the last couple of years. They've almost flown the flag themselves, to try and inspire the next generation. And it's nice to see the men's team, chipping in now, and we want to make that not just a one-off. I think we want to make it something that we do regularly, and we benefit from that, not just on the inspiration that it provides, but also the financial benefits that come into football via the Scottish FA, who are one of our biggest backers alongside Sport Scotland. So that money coming in filters down to all levels, and I think it's again it's important as part of that recovery that we did qualify, and it does give us something to look forward to in the summer.
David, just sort of on the medical side of it, perhaps it probably applies a bit more to sort of elite academy stuff, just in terms of like injuries and stuff. Like at this year, the injuries already, I know it's a bit of a jump, but you've seen down south and even in the Premiership up here, the amount of injuries this season has been much more than in recent seasons because of how packed the schedule is. You like to think youth football is probably similar.
There's not a lot of youth football playing at the moment. Depends on what level you're looking at. But again, adult football, everything's about recovery. Stuart will know, it's recover. How quick can you recover to participate at any given day, be it the next day at training? And now, so the training sessions aren't for the training now, they're for recovery. So there's more games rather than recovery. And even the bit of banter we'd have in the changing room with the players before in the treatment room, and then they'd relax, then go into a training session. Everything, the intensity's up there, everything's packed in. There's no time for recovery. So when we don't have enough recovery, we have fatigue. When we're fatigued, the little things come to the fore, but you're under pressure, you need to play, you've got to keep playing. So I suspect, talking to some of my colleagues as well, when you're saying, are you okay, let's assess this, let's check this, you might not have the player coming to see in the first place, whereas before they would, because they're under pressure to play. So again, it's all relevant to the level, and again, especially when just a week, as Stuart was saying, with my son who's 13, we're upstairs in the spare room. My wife, who I'll confess, she's English, she's downstairs, and she didn't want to jinx the game. And we're watching it, and I'm going, Blair, please, if any year we need to do this for us for football, it has to be now. I says, I just want to watch Scotland in the Euros with you. It's a wonderful experience seeing Scotland at a major tournament. And he's on the sort of spare, he's going, please, please, please. And his little face, just after I said, look, countrywide, people jumping up and down. This is what we needed. And then it was, he says, I'm going to go out and I'm going to run. That alone would have had a mass of kids out running to possibly be that person in the strip in 10 years, 15 years. That alone as a motivational tool would have been colossal. Because in the clinic from then on in, what was the topic of conversation? Not Scotland is nearly runs. This is fantastic. I'm going to book this. I'm going to book this. I'm doing this with my kids. This is where we're going next summer. This is what we're hoping to do. So psychologically, it was huge. Absolutely huge. But injury-wise, it's clubs are all going to be struggling to keep players on the park, heavier parks as well coming in. We all know what happens there, Achilles, calf injuries. And then when we look at the youth teams when they're back playing, as Stuart rightly said, hopefully some investment in for places to play, because there's a clamour from September onwards at grassroots football to play somewhere. It's fine if you want to be playing at 10 o'clock at night. I remember I was in Italy, in Rome, they were playing five-a-sides at midnight. And there didn't seem to be an issue. But that's not practical here. We're not going to have that in Scotland. But I think playing surfaces, we need more places for people to play. That's the thing. We don't have enough parks inside or outside for winter football to play through the year. And with a decent enough park and some floodlights, we're Scottish, we'll play. We'll scrape the snow and play in the snow if we had a place to play. We just need facilities. And I think if we have facilities, we'll get volunteers. Stuart's probably more than I used to. Have volunteered for years with football coaching as well, and I'll probably start again next year, I think, with my son's team. I do think there's plenty of people willing to put their hand up to join in, which is fantastic, because without the volunteers, we won't have grassroots coming through to amateur, coming through to junior, then elite football. So if everyone's working, if people are out playing, that's where we're going to complement the national team, and it has to happen at the youth level. Opportunity there. So,
David, I think you're right, and you've highlighted a really nice, a really relevant point in terms of those facilities and access. And I speak to clubs and I see a challenge in a normal year for facilities and having access. And sadly, sometimes it's just having somewhere for the kids to change and maybe go to the toilet. Nothing fancy, and sometimes we'll have somewhere to play but nowhere to change, and vice versa. So there's definitely a need for better, improved facilities on a local level. I'm not advocating more Tory Glens and Ravenscraig. I don't think we necessarily need them, but I think rather than build one of them, build 10 smaller community facilities. But this year it's going to be a challenge because facilities aren't opening as they once did. You take a situation just now with Glasgow Life at Nethercraigs. Really, really impressive facility, but the local authority weren't able to, the Leisure Trust weren't able to open it. It wasn't financially viable. So now, thankfully, Pollok United are taking part in a pilot project, Community Football Club. They're actually opening the facility. They're actually running it so that football can continue. But across the country, real challenges for Leisure Trusts to open, because you've got a situation where it's costing them more to open.
Yeah,
they're only allowed a limited amount of slots. There's enhanced cleaning and costs against that. So it's a real challenge. I mean, we've supported a number of clubs this winter with modular floodlights, for example, because it allows them to find a bit of grass, and just go and train, because access to 3G facilities is either not open or there's just not enough capacity. So I think facilities are definitely something that can help drive that participation going forward. But we really do need to look at investing in that, and actually giving these community volunteers and club volunteers just the basic tools to give them a chance to be successful. Because I see frustration in a lot of them. I see them kind of saying, we're being asked to try and develop a girls and women's program at the club. We don't even have a toilet. How do we convince the local residents to bring their girls down here and come and play football here when we can't even offer the girls somewhere to go to the toilet? And I would argue that boys should have a toilet as well, not just girls, clearly. But I think we do have to look at how we invest into facilities going forward. Certainly something that we try to do. We try to continually do a little bit to help improve things. But there's much to be done. There's a lot of work to be done. And again, coming out of this, it is going to be harder to find £700,000 to build a full-size 3G pitch. I've no doubt about it. But
I think what you said, Stuart, I like the idea of the modular floodlights, because locally where I live, there was an area that used to be, where it is, it's irrelevant, but it lies empty and there are lights there. And I'm thinking, I've seen to my son, we're out for a night walk with the dog. I'm going, I know enough Sparkies. I treat enough Sparkies. Surely we can get a bit of local sponsorship to get those floodlights on and get people playing the park. And there's no other facilities there, Stuart, but it'll be lit in the winter and it's lying empty. It's a local community park. And so, I've talked to a few people and goes, yeah, I know who is in charge of that. We'll try and get it going. And then I'll take some insurance out with SFA. I'll register it to do activities of a coach anyway with the kids. that's lucky because it's on my doorstep. Everybody doesn't. It's not going yet. I'm probably still, 9 months down the line. This was last year. I looked at that, Stuart. So, but it's still sticking at it. It's still plugging away to get someone to do it. And I think it shouldn't be that much. They're not looking for funding from the SFA or any of the trusts, just some of the local people who know who owns it. Let's get a little collection done to facilitate getting the floodlights working. Then we can look at the insurance through the SFA to get some of the local kids playing.
Yeah, I think something I see sadly as I travel about the country under normal circumstances, speaking to clubs is, and it happens quite a lot when I go into a facility and I think to myself, I know this place. I've played here as a kid, and you look at the facility and it's been left to rack and ruin. It's invariably been closed. The pitches haven't been maintained and they're a sorry state. A lot of in Glasgow in particular, you'll see kind of old red blaze pitches that have just become overgrown, and it's really quite sad to see that facilities that were once vibrant community places, that all you had to do as a football club was book a pitch, and you had that's all the manager had to worry about was looking after you kids as players, booking the pitch, paying the pitch, and getting on with it. Now you've got that, what you're describing there is a club leader having to try and fix a local authority problem where you're trying to open up something that should be open. It should be, and again, it goes back to that investment. I understand that we've maybe had to look at frontline services within, local authorities, and then parks and recreation maybe take a hit on that. But I think we have to change. We need to have a rethink about that. I think we have to get these facilities open again, or passed in a fit and proper state to the community group. Don't pass them on a problem, pass them on something, asset transfer, not liability transfer. I think if we can do that, actually in the hands of the community with a little bit of investment, you can actually start to thrive again. The facility will start to thrive. And certainly I think that will be the way out of this. I think the model will be community-led, sport hubs, and it being driven by volunteers. But we have to support the volunteers. We can't just say, over to you guys do it all, and you're responsible. We need to find ways to support that activity and those aspirations. So again, there's real opportunities just now. A lot of good sites that can move over to the community, but there's also a lot of sites that need investment before they're able to be used properly. So opportunities, I think, but we do have to look at how we invest, and then when we do invest, we have to look after things. We need to make sure we look after them and maintain them.
Sustainable for those that are involved as well, and they have to be aware. Locally, again, we're starting looking at this club as even tying in with the schools, the Duke of Edinburgh. The kids that play football can tie that up with the learning hours. And the local amateur club have said, well, if we can use a facility, they go, well, there are players of the future. Don't worry too much about, they're not looking at, they're going to some of the senior teams. The local players should be looking at grassroots, playing amateur football, moving on from there. And I said, well, if we can come together and get it set up, we can look at, they will help clean the clubhouse as part of their duties, learning skills. They're all a portion of different things to do, and then tie in with the school. I said it was signed off Duke of Edinburgh. And there's lots of ways for the learning opportunity as well as playing sport, and it gives them responsibility in the community. But it's easier where I am out in the sticks. We have an area of land, so don't get me wrong. I know that when I used to live in Hamilton Hill in Springburn, it was pretty different there.
Yeah,
I can only do what's on my doorstep at the moment. That's all you can do. But I think it goes back to getting the kids and getting them outside and getting them a ball. Nobody plays in the street anymore because they can. We'd be standing one side of a curb for hours and hours and hours, just constantly just doing things. We don't see them out with a ball enough because everybody's told to move on, unfortunately. So we do need an area for them to go. That's, I think, a safe area for them to go.
Yeah, definitely. And I think kids today are more likely to go if it's something that's organised, and you still get some recreational, particularly in summer months. But I think kids want that kind of structure and knowing where they're going. They want to go somewhere that they can associate with, but it's a fit and a modern facility that they want to call home, and I think there's an opportunity to really kick things forward, but we do have to get that next wee bit right to make sure that the places to play, as you said, are actually there. So again, it's a part of our work. It's something that we engage with the Scottish FA about. We work very closely with Sport Scotland on. I'm hoping 2021 sees more investment and as having an opportunity to do more. in a community setting, and making sure that we are being inclusive, and everyone, is having an opportunity to participate.
Yeah, I've always wondered, but without wanting to sound like the person who's just been doom and gloom in this video and article and stuff. see, okay, I'm aware that you are having a positive conversation that I come in, but what about this? See, without that money that came in sort of May time from James Anderson, and I suppose it doesn't even go to youth football, it's across the SPFL from Albion Rovers to Mull, really. Like, that money that came in from sort of James Anderson was a lifesaver at the time.
Yeah, I suppose, I think initially James had invested some money, you're right, into to support the kind of SPFL led clubs. But then, thereafter, we had some pretty early discussions with him, and he was really keen interest in the women's game. He was really keen to do something there, which he did through ourselves, the football partnership. And similarly, he recognised the amount of activity that goes on in a community setting with youth football, in the sort of male game. So he was keen to put that investment in. You're right. Where would we be without that investment? I'm not sure. I would like to think that there might have been, if it came to it, maybe the Scottish government may have, looked to invest something, and I think they maybe still will. I think there's clearly some talks ongoing about, I suppose, a recovery package for sport, and I know for sure that that's not just about the clubs at the very top of the game. I think it's also about at grassroots level. I had someone contact me today who's got an interest in amateur football, and an area that's maybe not had any support yet. They haven't had any of the James Anderson support for ourselves or the SPFL. So, is there opportunities to invest into amateur football? There could be, but yeah, I think the money that's come in has been a real godsend. I mean, to put that in some sort of perspective, in the women's game, a survey of the clubs, 44 clubs that we supported, 56% felt that they wouldn't have survived without the investment from James Anderson, which is, I think 25 is the number of those 44. Now, women's football's on an upward curve. Could you imagine losing 25 of your top clubs playing in the Premiership and the Championship? That could take years to recover from. So, his investment, just looking at it through the lens of women's football, has been incredible. It's kept, clubs going. It's allowed clubs to return to training quicker than they ever thought that they could. And it gives the game a chance to really move on. And that's what his investment was all about at that level. It was about giving the chance for the game to return, and not to be too negatively affected by the pandemic. So, an incredible man, incredibly generous. He's been brilliant to work with from our perspective. Very humble man, very good, very passionate about clearly football and other things that he invests into. So I think we need more James Andersons. I think that's probably that's maybe the thing. We need more James Andersons, and I think we can, again, going back to that national picture, I think if we can really put sport at the heart of the future for the country, then we can look at lots of different ways to invest into it, I think.
I would quite like to know a James Anderson as well, not so much for football or that, just so I can go away on holiday next year and things like that.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, I don't think there's many donors going about for that, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately not.
No, but it's hopefully because being in sort of youth football, I can remember being told we're going to get this new facility, we're going to build this big park and stuff. But I was a goalie, so if the ball came over the top and I would kick it over the fence onto the train track, it's like Ben Whitty Dane, we kind of replace that ball now. We've now got 9 for next training session.
Right.
And it is sort of that. Clubs have got lots of ambition. I don't doubt that. Seeing I used to work with Youth Football Scotland as well, so I've seen firsthand how much passion there is in youth football. That it goes all back to that investment thing. That goes before the pandemic as well. Like, the problem of investment at sort of grassroots level particularly has been the issue, and hopefully it's almost being put on the brink. Hopefully leads to a bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I think Yeah, I think football again has really shown itself to be a force for good. You think about some of the community clubs who've actually been doing non-football things in their community. They've been, delivering food parcels. They've been checking on neighbours. They've been, a support for older members of the community. Football clubs do a lot more than football. Clearly, the core purpose is still to play the game. But I think when you look at the wider outreach that they have in their community. And I think as well, anyone in the community turning up with a badge on, a football, a tracksuit, whether you're working with kids or you work, it gets people's attention. You get much more out of that interaction because it's a football club they're coming, and it doesn't matter what club it is. It could be a team at the highest level of the game, or it could be a local club. In the northeast part of Scotland. I was watching something recently, and I think it was Golspie Sutherland, and lad had on tracksuit, and I saw it right away because I know the club, and he was delivering fish and chips to old people in his community, which was fantastic. And he made a joke about how the people really didn't want to see him every other day, but he was a godsend because he was delivering food parcels. So football really does so much good. It's beyond the game, but I think we need to. You're right. We need to invest in it. We need to look at how we did it before, and not just go back to before. We have to recognise all the things that it does well, and if we genuinely believe in this idea of sport for change, then we need to have more people playing sport. It can't just be the same amount that we're doing it before. We have to invest in it, to encourage. There's no reason why every kid in Scotland, the way it works in Iceland, can't have a voucher or a leisure card that's charged up so that whatever sport they want to play is free. The card covers their fees for a year now, whether that's football, basketball, dance, playing the violin, playing the cello. If we give kids opportunities, because there must be so many who want to do things, kids from disadvantaged backgrounds who watch golf on TV maybe, want to be a golfer but don't ever get the chance because they can't afford the membership, they can't afford golf clubs. The same applies to football and other sports. Give kids opportunities. We can fix most things through sport, but we need more people playing it. So how we invest, I would like to see there being a change. Make it free for kids. Let's see what that does to our nation in 10 years' time. Monitor and evaluate it. Are we better or are we worse? I guarantee you we'll be better. And we'll be better placed to face the next pandemic. So let's look at how we spend money. Let's maybe look at doing a little bit differently. Let's invest into clubs. Let's invest into kids. Let's get facilities better if we can. And let's not just go back to what we were doing before, because I think we can do better and really make Scotland stand out as a forward-thinking sporting nation. I would like to see that, and I think Scotland qualifying helps that because there's clearly more money that then can filter in to help these things. And we've had 20 years of not qualifying or more, and that has that knock-on effect year on year or every couple of years by not being able to bring in the money that other nations have, and they get further away from us. So I think let's hope this 2021 becomes the start of something. But I think we do have to look at how we do things, and we need to make different choices and invest into people and young people in particular.
What you're saying there, Stuart's right. With a right, I think we look at a right to education, and the Scottish Government quite rightly does that. Everybody's a right to whatever education they want to go to, they can achieve, and it's funded up to certain levels. But they should have a right to sport, health and fitness and knowledge be there. When I talked about it again, treating kids or doing a bit of coaching, I said, what I'm telling you now, this information stays with you for the rest of your life. The communication skills stay with you for the rest of your life. The bonds you make, as you said, with players. I met a Glasgow rugby player. I played against him 30 odd years ago at Stirling County. He goes, I recognise you. He came into the club, I recognise you. Oh, you played at Stirling. So did you. Oh, that's right. And you remember, as you said, you remember past players from other teams. But I think if that's a great idea, if everybody had a chance, every kid had a chance somewhere to go and do a sport, and it's continued, you can only win as a country, not as winning at football or rugby, but winning as people and healthy individuals. And but then again, you go, who's going to do this? Who's going to run it? Where are they going to do it? That's for someone else to worry about as well. But I think the proposal has to be there. The proposal has to be there to push it. Why can't we do this? And someone else can look at the problems. You've already got people that paid lots of money to fix logistics in other areas of life. There's a way it can be done. There's facilities that do, like yourselves probably, when I'm out with my son or my daughter somewhere, will have a look and go, that's empty and it's open.
It's empty because the kids can't afford, the parents maybe not have the facility, they don't have the cash to pay it. Regardless how much it is, there should be people in there. There should be people in there at all times. There should be people queuing up. And I see that actually more often than not at the moment because of the pandemic, but pre-lockdown, I saw that as well. So it has to be managed a bit better and just get kids out doing stuff and keep them out, get them doing it.
So and that engagement doesn't, the sport's one part, but even engaging with kids in other things, dance, theatre, music.
Oh yeah.
We can develop young people just by being able to engage with them. And some of the things that we see that we aren't good about Scotland, the highest drug deaths in Europe, which just makes me really sad to think we think we're a modern nation and we've got that as an issue, but
horrendous.
We spend 1.25 billion a year on free prescriptions, which are absolutely fine for those who require them. But why do we need that amount spent? Why do we not maybe take some of that money and invest it into a progressive policy, which then means that as kids get older and become adults, they maybe aren't as big a burden on the National Health Service.
Yeah.
And we don't have to spend all of that money trying to fix a problem that we could have fixed 25 years ago if we'd put them on a kind of different path. So again, going back to Iceland, model, they've taken a situation where they had, antisocial behaviour issues with teen drug and substance abuse, and they've turned it around, and they have the cleanest living teens in Europe, believe it or not, according to something I read. So it does work. I think the Scottish Government do recognise that that sport is beneficial. I've spoken to and attended many events, but I think now we need to then look at how do we take some of that 1.25 billion. Let's take 250 million of it and give every kid between 5 and 18 an opportunity to participate in something, just one sport, but that's two nights a week training. That's a match at a weekend. There's 3 days on top of the school day that you're working with kids. And if you take the kids who maybe need that the most, the ones living in poverty, real disadvantage, those kids are the ones that need it the most. So if you've got them at school 5 days a week and 3 nights a week, you've got them at a club, we've got a real chance to give them that extra bit of support and to make them into, the confident learners that they're going to become and have aspirations to move on, either in sport, which some kids may see as an out. I want to be a professional player because it's my only chance in life. But if they don't get that chance to become a grassroots player, they can never be the professional. So
they have to get a chance.
It's a never-ending cycle of, I see it myself every time my kids come home. They say, "Dad, can we try this sport? Can we try?" And I'm saying, "Well, how do we fit that in with swimming and dancing and hockey and netball? Where do we fit it in? But you still get the wee face. So you can imagine a kid coming home continually saying, "Can I try golf? Can I try gymnastics? Can I try athletics? Can I try football?" No, you're not doing it. What does that do for that young person? So I think for me it's an opportunity that we could maybe try and do things differently going forward and see if we could make things better in the country.
Briefly, just in a past life, I was a physical education instructor in the prison service at Glenorchy, and we used I don't know if you want to cut that out or not. So used to have John Gagan coming in as well, and Jim Nick, but we worked closely with the drug addiction unit in the physical education department, and with this 12-step program, and prisoners would buy up to try and come off heroin, and part of it, they came in the gym with us every single day. We didn't beast them. They had to be there though. If you felt, because the different days when they were coming off drugs, but the important thing is they had to stay as a team. They had to stay with the guys that were on the program. If they couldn't do the football, or if we're doing volleyball, they'd get an opportunity to try different sports. They had to help me set it up, or they would help me referee. But they had to come down and do something before they passed through it. And the success rate was phenomenal. And it was through getting up in the morning, some of the hardest thing for these guys to do, because there was nothing to get up for, because there's nothing to do, but they had sport. They would come into the gym. They were given their own kit to wear, so their own uniform. And it wasn't like with arrows and stuff like that, a jail uniform, but they could identify with their peers and they were in sport. And we took some of the guys who moved on. There's on the Versa Climber World Records book, we've got 2 ex-prisoners, or they were prisoners at the time, that are in the top 5 in the world for doing the equivalent of Everest. They were drug addicts. And that means, so we had lots of initiatives within the prison trying to identify where in the community we could get them involved in sport and here and keep it going. And so there are things happening, but could we have done it before they came to prison? That's what it should have been. It should, because they never had it in the community. They would end up, that's why they ended up in prison. So there is an answer. We're trying to get it, and it's doing it at the early stage and getting them doing any type of sport, with their peers. And it could be dance, it's anything together with their friends. That's the important thing. Structured routine. But people have been talking about this for a long, long time. This could be, like, as you say, Stuart, the time that we could possibly get something in place in these communities to help it. Because it has to happen eventually. It has to happen at some point.
Yeah, and I think it has to be sustained. I mean, quite often you'll see, programs that go in for a period. They go in for 12 weeks, and you give some activity and you raise people's aspirations. And what do? It's not sustainable. There was some funding to do it for that period, but what we actually need to do is we need to keep working with that person, because 12 weeks isn't going to change their life. It will give them a taster, but after the 12 weeks, we then need them to go into a pathway. And it might be that they get 2 or 3 lots of 12 weeks, and they go, well, I don't like athletics, but I like football, or I don't like rugby, but I like cricket. And you've got to give them maybe almost a year of maybe having a taster session on different sports. Then they decide what they like, maybe what they're good at. What their other pals are into, but it does bring communities together. You think about that integration of people who maybe come to Scotland, from other countries. How do we integrate them into our communities? Well, I tell you what, if you give them kids a football, give them all a strip, they're teammates. Doesn't matter who they are, they're all equal. They work away together, and that then leads into other situations where if that kid's having a hard time in the playground, his wee teammate sticks up for him and says, so-and-so, he's okay. And I witnessed that myself as a kid. The amount of times that, knowing someone could get you out of a bit of a jam. You're just walking down the street, and someone would say, he's all right, he plays football, so we can actually do a lot. And it's a lot of these things are maybe not the first thing you think about when you think about sport, but actually it does so much. So, if we buy into it a wee bit more, can we make things better? I think we can. Maybe slightly biased because it's been really good to me, sport. And maybe that's the challenge. Maybe the challenge we have is convincing people in power who have not had sport in their life that sport is actually, even more beneficial than they'd ever realise, because maybe they didn't get an opportunity to participate for whatever reason. So I think we have to break that cycle and see if we can take things forward.
As humans, we're designed to move and compete at a certain level, and that is the sort of primal survival of the fittest. So I'm not saying everybody should be out there to win, but we're designed to move as hunter-gatherers. And for mental well-being and physical fitness, we have to have that ability and keep going. And we do it in packs. That's what we're pack animals as well. So that's what we have to be able to do and give the opportunity to do. And as you were saying, with different communities, it's like, again, here we've got sort of 3 or 4 different towns playing at Dunblane. So would my son have a friend at Dunblane or another town if they weren't all coming together at the football? So he could be walking around somewhere and go, oh, that's Ben, yeah, they're so-and-so, they're so-and-so. They're at different schools because schools never used to mix. But football has brought them together, playing together in different communities. They widen their social circle and then improve as a result. Yeah, so, yeah.
Absolutely. And it's not, and it really isn't rocket science, is it? It's pretty straightforward. It's not that difficult to actually, to fix some of these issues, but we have to try and, do it differently and not just do it for a period and then stop. We actually have to give it, a sustained opportunity to be successful. And I think that's, I think it would be fantastic, because then, what we could do? We could actually start to do, as they do in other countries, where you could actually start to employ some of these volunteers as coaches, so they can actually almost improve what they can provide, that particular sporting club, and they get time, because they get time to think, they get time to plan a session, rather than running about, leading their own life and their own business maybe, and working and running their own family, and then running the football club, and then running the facilities, which invariably they're having to do now, and make sure the lights are switched on and switched off. So we can actually, over time, by a change in tact, actually maybe take things to a whole different level in terms of how we progress sport in this country. So, yeah, I'd like the opportunity to see that happen.
I don't know if it's something you worked on, Stuart, but there was a project I worked on a few years ago that's sort of along that lines. It was called the Go Fitba project. Don't know if you remember.
Yeah, Spencer, I was thinking how I know your face. Yeah, so we did meet before. Remember you did? Yeah, so Go Fit was something. Yeah, you did. Did you not do that with? Yeah, you did it with. Was it not Sergio? Yeah.
I see. I thought that because I had it in the back of my head, former Inverness player, and I only clicked halfway through this. I was like, hold on a minute here. I think we've met.
Yeah, because we've got a video actually that you do the kind of intro on your voice. You do the kind of voiceover. So yeah, so
I'm 19 in that one, so I must be about 15 in that one because that was a few years ago now.
Yeah, it was a few years ago. So yeah, so that's I guess that's a project that tries to do kind of three things. It gets kids active, fun football, as you know, Ben. We then, go through a course, an interactive course syllabus on, how to lead a healthier lifestyle through diet and nutrition, balanced diet. And then we feed kids, which sounds basic, but some of the kids, as you know, Ben, that we work with, food is not something that they necessarily can take for granted. And obviously it's a project that does tackle things like food inequality, which is really sad to see. It's also really sad to see when you see some of the parents coming to the kind of final week where there's a bit of food for them, and you actually see, grown men and women filling their pockets with food to take home with them, and it really is quite sad to see. So that's a project that we've had some success with. I think my criticism in it is that we need to make sure that at the end of the 12 weeks when we've been working with the kids that they do have another pathway to stay in football, when it's not just about raising those aspirations. We need to make sure that we can do more. So it's obviously something that we're conscious of. We've changed it about a wee bit. There's been some really good activity actually just over the October holidays there through a pilot with cashback for communities and the Scottish FA, where we ran it as a bit of a funded camp for kids. So they could come along, no cost, they'd get their football activity and they would be, fed breakfast and lunch. So it was tackling that holiday hunger. So that project's evolved a little bit since we last, I suppose, collaborated a couple of years ago. So it's definitely something that's, for me, again, going back to my idea of an opportunity to do more with kids, for me, this is a wee bit of a plaster over a wound. It's something that helps a little bit. But really, we need to get to a position where that type of project isn't needed, because kids are already, they already have sport in their life and they have that support, and they aren't having to worry about how their next meal is going to appear. So, Go Fit was a great little programme. We've had great support from the UEFA Foundation for Children, as you know, as well, with it, Ben. So it's still very active, but it's a project that I would like to see in the future not be required, because I would like to think that we can have a situation where kids can be more engaged with sport more regularly, and they certainly shouldn't be having to think about where their next meal's coming from.
Yeah, that's probably, you could say that for a lot of projects in Scottish football, and I suppose Scottish society in general. There's a lot of things that obviously they need to be there, but I doubt the people carrying them out, despite the good work they're doing, they probably don't want to be carrying out, because we're in 2020, soon to be 2021, and you're still, as you say, I mean, these people come to these events and they're coming needing their next meal. It's a big thing for them, and it is quite sad, really, when you think about that.
It is, but what I would say is, though, I think football is quite uniquely placed to actually engage. I think if you try and run the same project in a different setting, you don't get the same buy-in. You don't get the buy-in from the parents. You don't get the same buy-in from the kids. And I think we Go Fitba, we used to talk in football about disguised running when the manager gave you a ball, and Go Fitba is potentially a disguised food bank, for these kids. But the kids don't feel like they're that they're poor or they're disadvantaged. They just think that they're going to play football and they get a wee bit of food after it. So the programme is structured to do something, I suppose, that the kids don't realise, that we're educating them, we're working with them, and we're giving them something to eat, and it's done with a great deal of humility. It's not, as I say, it's not a situation of making anyone feel like they're disadvantaged. We try to work with them, and I think football is really uniquely placed to do that, which is why I think we can do more with the right tools and the right resources, and it can fix a lot of problems through sport, I think, in football in particular.
Cool. Right, we've been going for just over an hour, so I'll get your final thoughts. And obviously, Spoke about sort of 2021. 2020 has obviously been an absolutely disastrous year. I think it goes without saying, just in all walks of life. But 2021, in terms of football in this country, has the potential to perhaps be one of the best, at least in my generation, potentially a few more.
Aye, well, it's something that's my son's never experienced. That it's been 20 years, me waiting to me seeing it, to see it again, and we're going to meet up with family. My sister's down south, go down to London. Don't expect to get tickets, but there's going to be lots of people meeting up if we can. We're going to go through to Glasgow to the fans area. He's going to meet up a lot of his friends. So there's a lot, hopefully, going to be happening for everybody to make it a wonderful experience. And we're going to be talking about it all the way up till then. And it should, pandemic allowing, obviously, hopefully it's going to be a wonderful event. And it's going to motivate the kids galore. You know, this is what they're going to be looking for constantly, what we've got coming on with the football. And I think more importantly, what Stuart's talking about there, the Go Football, that'd be great to see some inroads and more funding for the areas like, again, we're talking about different in Glasgow and Edinburgh that don't have the facility. And that's not forgetting, you know, the Fifers and what have you, but in general, facilities for the kids to, you know, go out and play, to get something structured. So hopefully that comes next year as well. But let's get back into watching football, even amateur football around the park, never mind into stadiums or the still in Albion for myself. So yeah, sucker for punishment with that one. Maybe it's not been too bad. So
yeah, I think it is a real, you know, there's a real springboard I think that can come from, you know, from what we've all got to look forward to, hopefully. And that come together. Some of the media stuff I do, it's really bizarre. You know, you're in a pretty empty stand, and I find it difficult to picture people sitting around about me again. And you know, you've been so close to people, and you know, just the thought of being able to do that again, I think is something to look forward to. And you add into the mix that, you know, we've got those games at Hampden, we've got the big game at Wembley, and for that game, most people will find a way to come together. Hopefully, if we're allowed to, and there will be people in pubs and people's houses, and it will be. You know, I remember, and I'm going to say it was 1996, if I get it right, down in England, and McAllister missed the penalty. And I remember where I was. I remember watching the game and being gutted. Euro 96, yeah, get that right. You know, it's that stuff again. It's that stuff that we've experienced. The kids, you know, some kids haven't, but they're going to get to it. Let's hope. You know, we seem to be really good at penalties at the moment, which is good. So if we can somehow get the England game to be something that went to penalties, I would fancy our chances. But yeah, there's a real opportunity, I think, for there to be a legacy for Scottish football off the back of this qualification. We do have to double down on giving kids opportunities. We do have to double down on improving community facilities, or actually just making the ones that we have better and more accessible. I think it's there's a huge, I think, cause for optimism as we move into spring, and thankfully, you know, the Euros are going to hopefully tie into that. And let's be positive. Let's get rid of your negativity if we can, and let's kick on next year and all kind of come together, and you know, a feast of football and you know, a feast of sport to look forward to.